Good afternoon, everybody. We'll call this afternoon's meeting of the Diversion Public Outreach Committee meeting to order. And our first item on the agenda is the minutes. Any comments or questions regarding the minutes?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second, Jake.
Okay, Jake is on the phone, a second by Jake. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign.
Aye.
Okay, we have a little delay there. All right, item number 2 is the committee membership discussion chair, and Roger has been the chair of this committee, and he has expressed an interest in keeping that position, and I would certainly welcome him in maintaining that position. He's unfortunately can't be here today, but
Well, I think that the chair should be at the meetings, and I would hope that Roger would be the chair, but if you don't make the meetings, it's hard to be the head of the committee.
Kevin.
You do such a nice job too, Kevin.
This is Jake. Roger has had knee surgery, so I'm assuming that's why he's not there today.
any other comments? Well, I think Roger's done a good job, and I would certainly advocate for him keeping the chair's position. So.
Well, and I think he's done a good job too, and I would support it. I would just ask that the chair make a valiant effort to be at the meetings.
Okay.
I move Roger Olson.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion for Roger.
Second.
We have a second. Any other motions, nominations? Any other nominations? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. All right.
Commissioner Campbell, one
Yes.
other item on that. Number 2, the diversion board is going to be voting on the recommendations from the different entities for the membership of the board and the committees. The joint powers agreement doesn't specify membership for this committee, and during those discussions with Joel and others in the leadership on the committee memberships for this committee especially, we have a couple more people we are reaching out to. We'd like to have a couple people from the Business Leaders Flood Task Force, try to get some more public sort of feedback that way. We've also asked, or will be asking, both Fargo and Cass County as they bring on their new people, if they'd be interested in attending. I know they've kind of kept those roles separate from the diversion, but if this is a once a month sort of coordination catch up on things so we can make sure everything's being done in sync, especially as flood time comes over the next couple of months. Good way to stay up to date. And so we were going to ask them, and we're welcome to other discussion on that too, but that was the thought of the groups that.
I did mention a while back, I did mention Sherry Larson too from,
yes.
She's kind of in charge, or the director of the Morehead Business Association now, and they're obviously have been supportive of this project, and I think they, if nothing else, being here and be able to go back and inform that business community on what are developing and what may be outreach issues would be, I certainly would like to see us invite her to be here. So. Okay.
Yeah,
Joel, do you have any other comments?
I'll just add to that, Kevin. The JPA does not, as Mr. Schneider had mentioned, the JPA does not specify a number of committee members on this committee, and so it would be up to the committee as far as invites or additional people they would like to join the committee. So, so we can certainly reach out to folks. Ultimately, it will come to this committee, and you guys will have to approve whether you'd like to open up another seat to allow somebody. So.
I think what you have brought up and the name that I brought up, I think it would be worthwhile for us to reach out to them and ask them if they would have an interest And then you could bring those individual names back to us and go from there. But, you know, we might as well not act on it until we find out if they have an interest. So, Mike, you have a?
Just one other comment or question. Any consideration of a representative from Horace being involved, perhaps on a committee like this? I know they've reached an agreement, I guess you want to say, with the Diversion Authority, and that's a growing area. Even Dilworth, I mean, granted the project's not directly affecting Dilworth, but I mean, they certainly opening the door if we can have multiple members. It doesn't hurt to have them at least in to, you know, voice any questions, concerns, and get feedback for their particular cities. So just something to consider, especially Horace, because Horace is directly, probably of the cities around here, is very directly affected by the project. So.
Absolutely. If the committee would like, I can reach out to Dilworth and Horace and see if they'd be interested in having some sort of representation on this committee.
Well, I think any time we can have input on ways to improve our outreach efforts on this, I think is a good thing, and the more the merrier, I guess, when it comes to this. So, John, any comments, thoughts?
And I'm glad I could make it today. You all know I can't get here very easily on Wednesdays, but what occurs to me, Mr. Chair, is maybe there are some folks in our communications departments that could be good adjuncts for what we do. And we keep a good relationship with them, or have somebody there dropping in and hearing firsthand what we're doing, because we, at the City of Fargo level, we really work with them a lot. So the better we have their expertise and their resources and stuff, maybe we just, and I don't mind having ex officio members. I don't mind having others here. They don't have to be voting members.
Right.
But I think the more the merrier, the more folks we have engaged with outreach and stakeholders represented, the better. Especially in these next few years coming up where it's kicking in, and this spring, who knows what's going to unfold with the weather events and flooding.
Mr. Chair?
I think you've got some direction there. Do you have any more comments?
Just another comment to follow up, Commissioner Strand. My intent would be to hire a public information officer for the Diversion Authority, and I have received approval from the board to do just that. In talking with the City of Fargo public information officer, Greg, he mentioned to me that it's a regular occurrence where the different entities, public information groups work together and in conjunction, bounce ideas off of each other. And we have an extreme amount of talent already within the organizations that are represented on the diversion. And so Mr. Schneider and I both kind of feel that once we get somebody on board with the Diversion Authority that can start to coordinate with the member entity, public information departments, it would be a great resource for this group and the Diversion Authority to be able to tap into that talent pool. So
that's a good update.
Yeah.
Right, so we can probably, Rocky, between you and Joel, we can maybe have this on our next agenda, and maybe, and I think you raise a good point, John, that some of them may even be invited kind of as an ex officio type of presentation here, as opposed to a voting member. I think that's, in some of those cases, that'd be appropriate. I do want to make a comment that Rick Steen sent me a message saying he had intended to be here, in the last minute he's got other commitments that he's tied up with, so he may come in before this meeting's over. All right, with that, let's move on to item number 3, project information points.
We saved some paper this month, you know, with the holidays. There hasn't been a lot of updates on project information points, so we didn't go through the process of updating that. We still have them. They're still current as of about December 18th, I think, was in the last date where it was. And so we'll update those as need be and supply them on a monthly basis to not just this committee, but the board. And Joel sends it out to a broader list of interested parties, legislators, West Fargo staff, and others.
Thank you. Item number 4, media consumption public survey.
Yeah, this one keeps going by different names, so I apologize if we called it something different last month, but I believe there's a draft in here. This was planned to go out earlier this month, and apologies because it takes a little bit longer from the post office to get a BRM permit. And so it's taken about 3 weeks now to work with the Sioux Falls post office to get it, and we're waiting hopefully this week and this can go out. But you'll see this is a tri-fold, and I'll probably fold it wrong, but on one side you have the name, address of the recipient, and then if you look on the inside, you have a perforated section that tears off with the little check boxes that you can fill in the information. And so it's really a brief letter from Joel. And the idea behind this is with the update that we're working on the communications plan, which we've done a lot of focus group effort on. We also want some actual sort of scientific data behind the plan as well. And so one of the things we've been lacking is in conversations, you know, people say we need to be on TV more, radio more, we need to send more direct mail, and we hear a lot of different things, and you can't do it all or you don't do it all well. So we're trying to figure out where do we really want to concentrate with who we're trying to target. So this is going out to 3 different populations in the area, and we can talk more about those, but the idea is to figure out, okay, if you're favorable or not favorable, or maybe have no opinion on the project, and then where are you getting your news about that, and then where would you like to get the news, and are you getting enough or not enough? And so it's sort of been tried to break it down to just those simple 4 questions that have really been the center of a lot of discussions. And I think as we get these back, we'll be able to start to correlate some data. You know, if you're living in the city of Fargo and you're favorable and you get all your news from one source, you know, if we need to target that population for some reason, okay, well, that's probably the source to go to. If you're maybe upstream or don't like the project and it's all centered on one source of information, if we need to reach those people with, you know, updates or accurate information or whatever, we know how to target them. And so there's a couple of correlations we can do there. And maybe people are saying we're tired of hearing from you, you know, too, or maybe they would say we want to hear more. And so some of that's good to know too. So.
How many are you sending out?
So this is going out to a lot of people. It's about 4,400 households in Fargo, about 2,000 some households in West Fargo, and then we've encompassed every resident in the 4 upstream townships. So one in Pleasant and Eagle, and Wolverton and Holy Cross.
So you don't need that many surveys in order to get a representative, so you must be looking to do something different.
Well, and so in total, we're probably sending out about 8,000, I think was the number.
But somebody has to tabulate all that.
And so we're expecting, we expect probably only a 10% return rate. And so we'll get 800 back, and that's probably a high number maybe. And so, you know, that'd give us some pretty good data, but that's 800 across the different populations. And so that upstream population isn't that many households. I mean, it's a couple hundred. And so you really need to get a pretty strong return rate from them to really get a good sense.
Hard to predict what the return rate will be.
Yeah,
individuals. I would guess if they're opposed to it, you'll hear from them. And if they're really hot for it, you'll hear from them. Other than that, you know, you wouldn't get one from me, except I would be compelled to since I am involved in it. But normally you send a survey to me, it hits the trash.
Rocky, are these printed yet?
These are not printed yet, so this is very much a draft. We've been waiting for that final survey to get approved, so we haven't gotten approved back from the printer.
One minor correction in that first paragraph. We requesting you fill out.
Oh, yeah. We did fix that in the later version. Thank you, yeah. Thanks for catching that.
Yeah, I think I brought that up last time.
Yeah, you did. This is probably still the same file we printed from, so apologize for that.
So nothing on Moorhead side?
Nothing on the Moorhead side.
Why?
Well, we have 2 townships in Minnesota that are impacted upstream, but nothing within the city of Moorhead. We certainly could.
But you still have the city of Moorhead as a, you know, kind of a major benefactor of this, and I just wonder why we wouldn't try to get some feedback from Moorhead residents as well. I know right away my constituents are gonna say, well, they must not have cared about us. They didn't bother to ask us. Like, you know, if once they hear about something, like, Joel, you know how it goes. It's,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think the logic behind the three populations was obviously upstream is an important interest for us to be able to.
well, something to think about if you,
And then the farm,
I'd certainly like to see something be included on the Minnesota side.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, Mr. Chair, and we can add Moorhead and Clay County onto the list.
Okay.
How much is this costing?
Mr. Schneider, I think postcard rates is basically what we're looking at here, right?
yeah, I don't know if you
There's a lot of administration to tabulate the responses and physically even sending them out, I should think.
Yeah, I mean, by far the biggest cost is the postage, and so, you know, postcard rate's 35 cents a piece, or the mailing rate. I guess we're not doing a postcard anymore. So just standard mailing rates, and then with the permit that we're getting, we only get charged for those that get returned, you know, so that cuts the cost down a little bit that way, and we feel like if we asked them to put a stamp on it, return rate would plummet even more. So we're setting up that permit process. But yeah, there is some tabulation cost that goes in. What we've done with the different populations is we've changed it slightly, so when we get it back, we can kind of quickly sort it. But yeah, there will be some tabulation effort that's probably in there that we probably haven't put into the quote, but the printing costs are pretty nominal to print that many.
So you're not gonna, is there any amount budgeted?
Yeah, we have we got a quote back from the form print. We got 3 different quotes, and we chose the form printing, and it's been approved by Joel through his administrative budget. Or it's through a already approved contract with us.
Yeah, and Commissioner, the administration time would be contained in an already approved task order with the PMC for public outreach services, and there's plenty of budget contained in that to accommodate this action. So.
So we'll work to get a mailing list in Moorhead. Not as familiar with where to work with that, but I don't know if the city auditor or something has a good list we could use. I know they have voter registration in Moorhead, and that might make sense as a target population.
You know, some place to check with would be maybe the independent school district, because they, you know, and that does then go out into the rural area south. I know when they did their bond referendum, they sent material out, so they had to have some sort of a list, you know, something to consider there. And I don't know how many that is, so, but I just think we should inquire into it and see what they might have. Okay. I don't have to spend a lot of time on it now, but you can look at it.
Yeah, certainly.
All right, we'll go on to item number 5, the lands outreach, the biogeo monitoring meetings. We've held all of those now, correct?
Yeah, they've finished up, and one lands outreach item that's connected to the survey is, I know Joel, one of his goals has been to sort of quarterly contacts with upstream populations, and we had hoped for one in January based off the Clomar from FEMA, but that looks like that's been more process that needs to go through, so we're not expecting that until maybe the next quarter or late this quarter. And so the survey is sort of that contact touch point, at least, you know, we can get information and hear from them, and so kind of counting that as the quarterly outreach there, so they don't get inundated with mail. Otherwise, for lands outreach, we're working on a media plan for when both the mitigation plan is approved by the state engineer and the Clomar takes place. Hopefully those sync up pretty well, because that would make a good sort of milestone point in time in which to contact people, is our thought.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to add, just for everyone's knowledge base and to provide some context, the mitigation plan is a requirement of the Diversion Authority to access to North Dakota state funding for the project. It was written into legislation and required for us to submit a mitigation plan to the Office of the State Engineer for approval. We've submitted a draft mitigation plan to the Office of the State Engineer. It's being reviewed right now, and we anticipate and hope for approval by March of that mitigation plan. Now, that's a significant item for us because it contains information about our processes and procedures and how we treat people that are affected by the project in a manner of different ways. And so it is a pretty important document, and it's information that people in the upstream area that are being impacted by the project have been told for a long time, but never seen anything in a document approved that we are going to implement. So it contains a lot of good information that we need to get out and we need to disseminate to folks. The lands outreach people, the land agents that are working can now have something in hand to address a lot of the questions of the impacted landowners. So just from a context, it's an important document. It is in draft format right now, and we expect approval in March.
Joel and Mr. Chairman, will there be an outreach directly to impacted representatives upstream where we go to them and offer up a moment to have a sharing? I'd recommend it if we are, and I'm assuming we will.
So I think that's a great topic and a great item that you bring up. I think that's something that this committee can discuss, how we might want to approach that and make a recommendation. I'm willing to do anything along those lines, and whatever this committee feels is the best direction as far as that outreach. Certainly implement that. I think we're fully intending to try to do our best effort to get accurate information out. There's a lot of great information about the process and about the mitigation we are committing to with this document. And it answers a lot of questions that people have had for over a decade about what's going to happen to my particular parcel of land in my particular house, and where am I, and how am I impacted, and what it answers all those questions. And so it's a great opportunity for us to get accurate information out and to basically clarify what is going to happen and then start to implement those things and provide some of these people some closure on what has otherwise been a very difficult process up to this point. So.
And I agree, that's a topic of huge interest by folks who are impacted. Another thought might be to have it not etched in stone quite yet, because then if we have an opportunity for feedback to tweak it or improve upon it with their input, that there might not be harm in that if possible.
That's a good comment, and one comment, I'll take that comment to the Office of the State Engineer. We're required to get approval from them of the mitigation plan, and so that will come through. But as we amend that plan or change it, I don't know if anybody's considered a procedure with the Office of the State Engineer for additional approvals above and beyond once we get the initial approval. So I'll check on that and report back. So.
I think it's important to point out that in our mitigation plan, when we are dealing one-on-one with individuals, there are opportunities for, obviously we can't change the route of things or what properties are going to be included and what properties aren't going to be. But the mitigation plans in terms of whether it's an outright purchase or a buyout, or if it's flowage easements, there are, we do have dialogue with them, and I think we're experiencing that right now. Even I've been opened up to seeing more of that now through our involvement with the MCC JPA, because we're starting to actually do some of those things on the Minnesota side now as well. And there is, hats off to the Cass County Joint Water Resource District for all they've accomplished, and we're kind of hoping that we can work that same way. And there's some negotiation abilities that we have, John, too, with landowners on, to help. You're never going to address all their concerns when it comes to somebody who may have been there 100 years who has to be replaced. You can't change that, but you try to make it as best as you can for them. So
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Strand. I think you brought up a good point as well that, both with the Office of State Engineer in North Dakota and the Minnesota DNR, we're never done working with them. It's a fluid process. It continues. Obviously, they have to have some milestone, phase type approvals just with permitting, with the mitigation plan. The mitigation version that we're updating was actually submitted, at the time of we submitted our Minnesota permit. That's the last version. And so we put that together with a lot of input from the different agencies in both states. And we expect that to continue, especially as permitting, conditions become final. Any tweaks that needed to get made will get made. If, any future project changes because of these soil borings and other, studies that go on that need to be changed and incorporated, those will all be incorporated in, as Joel said, is there another official review round or not? But either way, we'll continue to work with them, and they'll continue to be interested. So.
All right.
One thing on the BioGeo meetings,
Yep.
We did have a suggestion come to us. There's a lot of questions on soil borings and what soil borings are, and I know we've been unable to secure all the, easements and things we need from the landowners, and so Clay County's taken a number of actions. We had a request that, maybe if we had a video of the guys actually out there doing a soil boring to show that, how invasive it is or isn't, that might be helpful. We've had some internal questions about the timing of that. Are we too late for that good idea? Or is it, we're still trying to work to secure them, and obviously the legal process is ongoing. But would that be helpful or not? I know there's a crew going out soon to start that we could, film while they're out there and do that sort of thing.
I think it's an excellent idea if they're going to be out there. I know they're going to be doing it sometime, this spring. I think, but and obviously, our goal was to have had all of those rights of entry or easements signed in advance of all that happening. But I think one of the questions that I heard, even more so than what is it that they do? It's are they going to fix what goes wrong? Sure. And by that I mean they're not going in there with Tonka toys doing these things. They're going in there with some pretty decent size equipment, and do they rip up the roads or what have you? And that's there's a lot of concern on the part of owners from that standpoint, and I think we need to reassure them, of what we would do in that event.
And I know, we always are very hesitant to recommend legal action of anybody, and so we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure that we limit that.
But it certainly is our intent, if we've known to cause the problem, to fix it.
Yeah.
Right? It certainly better be. Okay. All right. Moving on to item number 6, the Red River Basin Commission Conference Review.
This is a conference that was held a week and a half ago, and I can turn over to Joel in a minute. We routinely have hosted a booth at this as a diversion authority. I think for the last 8 years I've been involved in the conference we have, and we've always had a presentation as well. Joel presented with Colonel Jansen, and they did a great job. No questions actually, but it is a really good audience. Room was packed, full of people from Manitoba, from Minnesota, and from North Dakota, for both agencies, that we work with, state engineer and the DNR's office. And so it's a really good audience. We had a lot of good questions at the booth. This is a good conference to attend from my standpoint, because a lot of Canadians, and they're all very, very supportive, and they obviously have seen it firsthand and the benefits of it. And so it's nice to hear that feedback as well, that why haven't you done this yet type feedback. Why isn't it done? And so, but there is a lot of, Buffalo Red River Watershed District membership there, and so there is a lot of good sort of hall conversations to try to help answer questions and see where we need to spend some more effort as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Schneider. That was a pretty good recap of the conference. I think it was very valuable that we were there and that we had a booth and that we had a very active presence in that conference. Pretty much most of the water professionals and people involved in water projects attend that conference and gain a lot of great information about the Red River Basin. One question I did receive after the presentation that was not in front of the group was some questions about how the P3 was going to be operated as far as financially. And the question was being posed by a few folks that lived in Winnipeg. And after I kind of explained the P3 process, they said, you know, at this point with the Winnipeg diversion, our benefit to cost ratio is over 100 to 1 at this point, which just I share with this group because it's a pretty significant number when you think about it, a $100 return for every dollar spent. That project hasn't even been around for more than 60 years, 50, 60 years, and it's been added on to over the time. So I think sometimes we lose sight of the long-term benefits of what this project is going to provide for the FM area. And it's a tried and true type of a process and project, and we can gain a lot of insight by looking at our friends to the north and the benefits that diversion project has given them. So I just wanted to share that with the group. Other than that, I thought the conference was great. It was a great opportunity to present with the Colonel, and yeah, so we'll leave it at that.
Very good. Mr. Chair, we did have the opportunity to shoot a video with the Colonel while he was here, a 3 questions video.
Okay.
You know, he's a new Colonel.
Let's see it, yeah.
Been up to Fargo at least once for a meeting, but everyone's might not have met him, so it's a good sort of 2-minute.
Well, first and foremost, people are suffering, and the people in the St. Paul district are passionate about using our expertise to help others. And we see the flood risk that the people have suffered here, not only in terms of life, safety, and property damage, but also the limitations to economic vitality for the region. We're very involved with disaster response. We work with local, state, federal partners under many federal authorities. We do things like technical assistance. We provide things like sandbags and pumps. But we would always like to get out of disaster response and rather focus efforts on long-term flood risk reduction. This is a large-scale project which will deliver reliable flood risk mitigation for the Fargo-Moorhead metro area and the region at large. Yeah, we have great momentum in 2019 heading into 2020. We look at some of the major structures we have. The diversion inlet control structure, work underway. We're doing pile load testing to make sure that we have a sound foundation moving forward as we build that. In November, we awarded a $59 million contract for the Wild Rice River structure. And then moving east at the Red River structure, we've got a large-scale physical model that was built down in Vicksburg, Mississippi at the Engineering Research and Development Center. This will allow us to complete the design of that major structure. And then design work continues on the southern embankment and the I-29 raise.
Good.
One thing with these videos, they've been well consumed. City of Fargo, who helps with the public access, has asked us a couple times about, they can run a 30-minute segment on public access TV. If there's a way we could sort of consolidate those, and not just run them back to back to back, which is an option. So one of the things we've started outlining is, okay, which ones would be good and fit together in a, narrative story that you could do that, because then, that's free playback that we could get, every week forever type thing, and make it sort of a historical document almost, or production. Because I think there's been a lot of good interviews, and obviously some are dated, what's happened in 2019, or when Joel was a council member, did a video. So some of those get dated, but a lot of it stands the test of time. So.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, that's well done. Item number 7, March North Dakota Legislative Water Topics Overview Committee Presentation.
Well, it's going to give Joel an opportunity to talk about the mitigation plan and approval from the state engineer. So,
yeah. So the last Water Topics Overview Committee presentation to the North Dakota Legislative Committee. The 2 biggest items I think that we all heard out of that, and that I heard from legislature, was what are you going to be doing to work with the upstream and the impacted folks? And unfortunately at that time, our draft mitigation plan was a working document. There were a lot of policies and procedures that weren't developed yet. Our ideal situation is that we get our mitigation plan approved by the Office of State Engineer prior to the Water Topics Overview Committee meeting, and I'll spend a significant portion of my time previewing what we are going to be doing to mitigate the effects of our project with the impacted landowners, which I think is going to be extremely informative to that community, and they're going to get a lot of great information out of that and be able to ask some questions as well about how the programs work, and I'll be able to discuss those along with giving them an update of where we're at with the P3 procurement and where construction, with the construction status of Corps of Engineers projects that are ongoing. So.
All right, item number 8.
In your analytics packet, you have 3 pages for the month of December. So those are the first 3 pages, and that's your standard monthly report. And then the last 3 pages are for the entire year of 2019. And so that's kind of, I wanted to make a few notes about last year. You can see that our website traffic continues to remain steady and increase every year. And we always see an uptick when there's a big announcement about anything. And so you can see the spikes there in traffic, which is good. If you look on the YouTube statistics, the watch time is decreased over last year, but that's because the year before we had the task force meetings and people were watching the entire task force meeting. So the watch time is lower, but if you look at actual views, the number of views is higher. And so we can consider, I consider that a success. And then if you look at the backside, you'll see that we had a little more engagement on social media and some more followers and impressions. And I think steady growth is a good goal to have with the different platforms we've established, and I think those are on track. So. And then we've also included in your packet a year in review of news analysis. So the emails that you get that have all the news stories that are related to the project, they're included in here. This is September to January, so it gives you a good overview of what's being talked about in the news. So.
Mr. Chairman, Tammy, have you folks looked at YouTube advertising?
So we will be looking at all tactics like that with the new communications plan. We've never done it with this project before, but I've done it on other things that I've worked on, and so yeah, it's a good option.
Be a really good fit.
Yeah, and you can
have these
target
little
it.
quips, these little 3 questionnaires show up when people are looking at relevant content locally.
Mm-hmm.
We did a small campaign to test it out on Twitter as well, and that seemed to really drive up the impressions, drive up the sign-ups and everything. And so I think there is a means for that, but we want to have a plan that, you know, directs us toward that or not.
You know, any place that we can show, just like even in the Colonel's 3 questions here, anytime we can show the opportunity or get the opportunity to show that this project is progressing along and that there is actually work being done, that we should be able to show it. And whether it's the areas there that they showed, or I think a lot of people might understand that even what in-town levies are currently being done on both sides of the river, the work that's being done is done in coordination with this project. And you know, you might have I've seen some comments, you start talking about social media, I see some comments where we spend, you know, north of $500 million and nothing's been done. Nothing further from the truth in those comments. You know, so the more, I still think it's important for people to see that, yes, things are moving along. Are they moving as fast as we would like them to? Probably not. But in some cases, our hands are tied right now. Hopefully that'll be resolved shortly. But I think that's really important. I think from an outreach standpoint, you know, how often do any of you hear, is this really going to ever happen? My response to him is, it is happening. So.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right. And 2020 is going to bring us multiple additional projects that will begin. The Southern Embankment Reach number 1, the I-29 grade raise project are both anticipated to be bid this summer and late fall through the Corps of Engineers. We'll see the start of construction on the Wild Rice structure. But if you're not driving down south, you don't see those things. Obviously, the work that's been done in Fargo here on 2nd Street and 4th Street Pump Station and all of that work is very visible. People see that because it's downtown. But I think you're right, Kevin. I think people don't necessarily know that those are components of the diversion project. And they are components. Without being able to protect the in-town portion, the diversion isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. So we need to allow water through to a certain elevation. The levees and flood walls within Fargo and Moorhead that are being built are components of the diversion project, just like the Southern Embankment, just like the diversion channel, and they all work in concert with each other.
My point is the $2.7 billion project that we have also includes all the work that are going on within
Absolutely.
In the cities.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so I think the better we can remind people of that, the better off we are. But, okay. Tammy, anything else under? Okay, thank you.
Questions.
Thank you.
Oh.
Do we, all right, okay, Ken.
Would you play us that minute 49 video that I think is the overview of the project, where it says watch again?
Sure. That's the, I can. This is the animated flyover video.
The FM Area Diversion Project is a combination of features that work together to provide flood protection.
Oops, sorry.
Moorhead, West Fargo, Horace, Harwood, and other communities near the metro region. The southernmost part of the project is the Southern Embankment. This is a dry dam embankment that runs from east to west from Minnesota into North Dakota. As extreme flood events happen, this dry dam will protect the metro area from devastating floodwaters and hold those waters south of the metropolitan area until the peak of the flood has passed the metro area. Flowage easements will be purchased for properties south of the embankment that will be impacted by floodwaters during extreme flooding events. The first structure along the route is the Red River Control Structure. The gates on this structure can be set during flooding events to allow a safe amount of water through town. During extreme flood events, this structure will safely hold water back. Interstate 29 and county highways will go over the southern embankment. The dry dam meets the control structure on the Wild Rice River just west of I-29. The control structures will normally open to allow the rivers to flow. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers hired a contractor to begin building the diversion inlet control structure in 2017. The Corps is leading the work on the southern embankment and associated structures. During extreme flood events, waters will move west toward the diversion inlet control structure at the southern opening of the diversion channel. A small embankment to the west of the diversion inlet control structure helps contain water during flood events up to the probable maximum flood. As waters from extreme flood events enter the diversion channel, they move safely around the metro area in a controlled way. The diversion channel crosses multiple rivers, including the Cheyenne River and the Maple River.
So because it's Twitter, it only shows you 1 minute and 49 seconds. There's the rest of the video is, would you like me to show the rest of the video?
The rest, sure.
Okay.
We use this video at conferences at the booth, and I think it's the best thing we have because you don't have to have sound. You know, it has all
the FM Area Diversion Project
You'll
is a
see people
combination of
sit and
features
watch the whole
that work
thing and never have to talk to anybody. Sometimes you don't want to talk to
around the
people.
metropolitan.
They'll watch the whole thing and keep moving on, but it's more information than you get just walking around.
Along the way, due to the water surface elevation within the channel being below grade, the channel has a footprint that is 1,500 feet wide and approximately 20 feet deep. It will be designed as a natural or non-concrete channel with the ability to handle 20,000 cubic feet of water a second at the diversion inlet control structure and the additional waters from the rivers and drains that enter it. Diversion channels are used by other communities, including those in the Red River Valley, to protect them from catastrophic flooding. The City of Winnipeg uses multiple diversion channels to protect residents from flooding. The channel continues north and takes water from the Rush River and the Lower Rush River. This water is safely moved toward the Red River. The channel meets the river near Georgetown, Minnesota, and water continues to flow north, eventually toward Lake Winnipeg. For more information about the FM Area Diversion Project, visit fmdiversion.gov.
Great, thank you.
That is a good video.
That is a good video. You know, perhaps there could be mention of in-town levies and how those operate in conjunction as well. I don't know if we can amend the video or add that in there, but
We can do anything.
of course you can.
Okay, let's move on to the number 9, the communication plan update. Hey, meetings and survey.
Yeah, I want to give you a regular updates as we go through this process. Our January, if you remember the schedule from previous schedule back in here, but our goal is to get a number of focus group discussions done. Sort of, we have a number of set questions that we ask groups and do a lot more listening than talking and try to, you know, get down all the information points. And then our tough job will be putting the different ideas together in a cohesive fashion. And so far we've met with Clay County, we met with both commissioners here and their administrator. We've met with Cass County Chair, the new Cass County Chair, Commissioner Peterson and Robert Wilson, and we met with Mayor Mahoney and Michael Redlinger. I was out of town the last week, so then we kind of took a little hiatus and working on scheduling a number of additional groups. I think we have 4 or 5 more we'd like to do with sort of small group, you know, hour just listening sessions. But I think we've gotten a lot of great ideas out of them, and you know, a couple things that are maybe conflicting with each other that we'll work with Joel to help resolve those items. You know, but for the most part, everybody is you know, thinking in the same direction, so that's good to hear too. But we're not just talking with board members and member entities. We're trying to get out to both, you know, community groups and some upstream residents as well, and try to get some feedback how we can better communicate about the projects.
Okay. All right, other business.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just tag on to an earlier discussion. In my head, this identifying a PI, a public information officer, is absolutely crucial and urgent. You know, I'm beginning to more and more, in my head, put the information about flood protection into the categories of climate action. And we all need to be using this mindset of it's climate action at the local level. It's absolutely, you go out to conferences, they're telling you be prepared for crazy events that are extreme floods and droughts. This is what we've been doing here for a long time, but we need to put it in the present day context. It's climate action and it's urgent. And then with the weather hitting us right now, this might be a once every 10, 15 year event of this type of weather event going into a spring. It's absolutely critical that we be on this information game now, especially this year, and attach ourselves, connect ourselves to the bigger context conversations of climate action. It doesn't resonate with everybody that this is climate action locally, and it's essential. So just thinking out loud as you're wrapping up the meeting, this is where my head's been aiming lately. And it gets a different conversation going with some folks when you start putting it in that light.
Mr. Chair?
Certainly we're seeing more and more floods more frequently than we have in the 30s and 40s and 50s.
Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you, Commissioner Strand, for that information. Rocky and Tammy Jo, I don't know if we can pull up the presentation I did last night for the NDSU Ag Club. Sure. And if you can please pull up the slide, I believe number 2 or 3, that shows the hydrologic crest data for the downtown gauge at the City of Fargo.
It's gonna take me a minute to remember the login.
That's okay. But Commissioner Strand, what you'll see is the crest data for the Red River over the course of 115 years. And there's a striking trend line in that crest data that shows an upward moving trend line. And it's getting to the point where it's significant. And so when people ask me, well, why did people build in the floodplain? You know, why did Fargo build where they built? It's their fault. But when you look at the crest data, 60 years went by before we had a real significant crest here in Fargo Moorhead. According to this data, now of course we know back in the 1880s there was a record flood, and we know and we have some level of evidence that there were even more significant events before that based off of different methods of looking into the past. But I think what you're seeing here is both a combination of potential climate change and the potential for changing our physical environment through drainage channels, impervious surfacing, and really terraforming our drainage basin. And that combination is causing the issues that we see today. And if the trend line continues, we will continue to see significantly higher and higher flood crests here in Fargo Moorhead. And there's no denying the data when you look at it, and it's actually a bit scary when hopefully we can get it pulled up here. If Tammy Jo can get it.
I can get it.
When everybody's watching you, right? You know, there is discussion in the DNR's EIS as well, that and the Corps, you know, about resiliency, you know, is one of the key words you use. And, you know, nobody, I think when the FEMA administrator was here, he said something, you know, you don't want to build a project to this scale and be wrong by this much, you know, so build in the flexibility because things change. I think that was an important point.
That's right, Mr. Schneider. And Commissioner Strand, if you have some time to stick around for the Finance Committee meeting, which is after, at what time is that?
Finance is at 4.
Maybe you could come back or watch it on video later. We will be doing a presentation about the Envision process. And the Envision process was created by ACEC, APWA, the American Society of Civil Engineers. And it's a process that's being embraced by large mega projects. And the whole focus is on resiliency and adding resiliency components and actually getting credit for adding certain components. And there's also an element of sustainability, both financial sustainability and infrastructure-related sustainability with the process. But we've been able to find some budget within the PMC's task order to be able to add the Envision process to this project at no cost increase with the current budget. So I'll be proposing this idea to the Finance Committee along with doing a short presentation about what Envision is and the benefits that it can bring to resiliency and sustainability for our project here. Thank you, Tammy Jo. You can see here's the crest data for the FM region. And so on your y-axis, that's the flow rate through town. From 1900 to 2015, I think you can see a pretty significant trend line in that data. And if that trend line continues, we're just going to see larger and larger and more frequent flood events and crests. And so it's, you know, it's a little cyclical. You can see it go up and down, but in general, it's following a trend line of increasing concern. So I think it's twofold. I think it may be climate change, and it can also be attributed to lack of regulations on drainage in the past, and not having any constraints. People could drain wetlands, drain fields, create you know, undue stress on their neighbors without having to mitigate them. Nobody was constrained with the laws and regulations and rules that we are on this project. And we're actually going above and beyond what we're required to do according to federal, state, and local requirements as far as mitigation is concerned, because we're concerned of equity and making sure that we're making people whole in the way that we impact them. So I think it's a great discussion, and I obviously believe in your conviction in getting this message out and addressing this and allowing some level of dialogue around these issues because they're so important to us. So.
Okay, thank you. We're just about have to finish up here. I do want to raise one issue in regards to social media, and along with social media and Twitter sometimes comes things that aren't necessarily pleasant. And there was a comment directed at me on Twitter that I feel is very inappropriate, and it was done through the Diversion site. And I think we have to have a policy in regards to this. Certainly, I am all about transparency, but I am also not about personal attacks. And there's no place for that. And so hopefully we can have a policy. And anybody, I'm not going to share this here, but if anybody wants to see what I'm talking about, I have it right on my phone. And I think when you see it, you'll see that it was very inappropriate. And I think we have to have a policy when something like that happens